So video 4, we get to see the end result of what we worked with. So we created our cliff, we sculpted it, now we exported it, and I can see it right here. I do need to give it the material. My end packages probably has this named a little differently, but this is the one I ended up using. I can apply it. And then because I built this directly in my course file at the 0, 0 location, when I bring this in, it should drop right into the right location to where I had it in the Blender file, which is right there. Okay, so here's our cliff, and you can see, this looks pretty darn close to the style I had of everything else in here. I mean, this turned out good. It's got a lot of character to it. It's very organic. You're not seeing repeating textures really. Like this seems like a very natural cliffside. The magic of this was this material that we put in with a custom shader. I'm gonna walk through this because if you had tried to hand unwrap this in Blender and just put a single material on it, it would have looked nowhere close to this good. This shader is doing some pretty good magic behind it. What it is something called a triplanar shader. So rather than most shaders, which are just going to apply to whatever you had UV unwrapped from Blender, this is projecting itself with no need to unwrap on the Blender side. It does use a little bit extra calculation to figure that out, but performance-wise, I didn't see it having any major impact into, I wouldn't do this again on anything small, like smaller medium-sized rocks. If you're doing it on larger cliffs, not a big deal. So beyond projecting onto the thing, or onto the mesh, it's combining multiple different textures on it that I'm going to walk through kind of like what it's doing. And again, I got a huge assist from ChatGPT who helped me write this. It did most of the heavy lifting to this. So it has a base albedo, and then I put the normals and an AO on it. You can control lots of different settings here. Texture scale is important because it's basically how big the texture is to know if it's going to repeat. So 0.06 versus like let's say I was on a 0.5, you can see now you're seeing the repeating all over the place, right? Because it's so 0.06 made it large enough that it projected onto here and was the right sizing. I can also control I have separate brightness and I basically didn't want people to have to go into Photoshop to keep manipulating these images to get them right. So I gave a lot of control to desaturate. You can go to black and white with these things and control the brightness and control how much the normals were coming through on the strength of these. There's a lot of control built into here. And then there's a secondary texturing that, so rather than having one texture which you could see the repeat sort of on it, a secondary texture allows this to blend a little bit better so that you don't see that. And I can figure out the blend between the first and the second here and change just how much one influences the other. How much the the normal blends with it. There's just a ton that you play with basically to get the look of if the lines are too heavy on this one, bring the normal down. You can bring it up, whatever it happens to be. You have a lot of slider control. AO would be the shadowing of how much shadowing you want out of this stuff. So pick the right textures, mess around with them. Textures have a little bit of character is okay. Don't want textures to have too much. Like when I say character, just too much going on in the texture where you're going to see the repeats. Like kind of these good generic rock textures are good to create a look, but not anything that you notice the repeating pattern to. And then the final blend is it's a overlay onto just the tops of these cliffs. I put sand on here. You could put snow. You could put moss. You could do whatever you wanted onto these. And again, you control how much of the blend, like that's nothing, that's full sand on these tops, and then there's more control here of how much it appears on the tops, the softness of it, how much it blends, the noise scale of it. I won't go through all of those, but it's more just to call out all of these sliders throughout the whole thing were just built to give extra precision control so you could kind of come up with the exact blended look of your cliff that you wanted to. So what I put in here was, the blend of the cliff that I'm particularly using that's meant for like kind of a canyon. But don't be locked into this. Pick your own things, change these slider bars, and really create a look of a cliff that you like. You can go radically different within the same shader, just changing things up. Like if I, look at this, like this is completely different of a rock formation than what the canyon looked like. Similarly, I think I have some other ones that's triplanar. So let me just mess around and quickly throw another one on. This one is one that we're like, it's a completely white look to everything here. I think this was like a course out in the UK that had some kind of white cliffs to it that we were messing around with, kind of coming up with a look and feel. And you can see, up close, these things actually look pretty good because of the texturing. But it's a completely different look just by using the desaturate, the brightness, changing how the overlays affected each other. So there's a lot of magic in that triplanar shader that gives you a ton of control. So that's it. At this point we've formed a cliff, we've sculpted a cliff, we've decimated it, we've popped a texture on a Unity, gave it a mesh collider so that it applies the physics, and off we go. This is workable game side. If anybody does have any questions at any of these steps, how I did it, ways you can manipulate them, hit me up on Discord. I'm happy to talk shop on it.